It is so good to see you here, especially early on a Saturday morning when many of y'all have to be up early tomorrow for church. Thank y'all so much for coming out and spending this time with my friend Christian and I. I'm Dexter Mccoy. I've had the great honor of serving this community that I love so much as county commissioner these last 3.5 years, and I'm your candidate for Fort Bend County Judge. Look, the reality is that I'm not supposed to be here. Being the son of teenage parents, an incarcerated father, growing up in a small town without many of the critical resources that any person might need to thrive, I'm not supposed to be standing here today. But by the grace of God and my family's value of education, my mom went on to to college and moved us to this bastion of hope called Fort Bend County. You see, when I was in Louisiana, we were poor. The start of my grandparents' driveway was the end of the city limits. We didn't have access to the city's water and sewer system for the longest time. I grew up, and it was a big deal when we got access to the internet. So imagine my shock when I came to Fort Bend County, the land of milk and honey, it would seem, where we had people from all over the world, whereas where I was from, the only diversity we had was the Vietnamese family that owned the Chinese restaurant. This was that shining light on the hill. And so it's in this place that at the age of 12 years old, I met the woman who stole my heart in choir rehearsal at the Fort Bend Church. That woman, I get the great pleasure of calling my wife today. And we are raising two beautiful young girls in this community that made us. You see, this community prepared me to go on to work as an aide to the Secretary of Education during our President Barack Obama's administration, making sure that we open up the doors of opportunity to those folks for whom it had been locked for far too long. When that ended at noon on January 20th, 2017, when the new president took the oath of office, I packed my car and I came home to where my heart always was. Dove into leading in our local school district, connecting student leaders and administrators with the tools and resources that they needed to thrive. And when the call came to serve at a greater level, to serve our county in our county judge's office as chief of staff, I accepted that call. But you see, the thing that broke my heart was the first time that I went out to Kendleton, Texas. And I met with some folks at the Greater Wesley AME Church, a historic church over 150 years old. I sat there and I heard them tell me that in 2021, they did not have access to the internet. This in one of the wealthiest counties in this state. How is that possible that people still don't have access to the internet? This is at a time when all of us were learning online, doing business online, making sure we were able to stay connected to our families online when we were locked in during COVID, and they did not have access to the internet. That wasn't just by happenstance. No, that was by design. And so I committed myself to making sure that we did something about it. We formed an $11 million public-private partnership with Comcast, and I was so proud that last November we cut the ribbon on the first leg of our rural broadband expansion program to get those folks in Kendleton the access to the internet that they deserve. Now, the thing that was really shocking as I looked from my purview as a staff member in the county was that when I came back home in 2017, many of the same sidewalks that were broken when I was a kid were still broken when I came back. Many of the same streets that were laden with potholes were still filled with potholes today. There was a playground set in Mission West Park where kids would routinely slide down and get cut because the slide was rusted. Meanwhile, my neighbors looked at folks on the other side of the community, newer neighborhoods that got all the nice investments from the county, all the responsive services, and I did not think that was right. And when I started to understand how power and money worked and understand how resources were allocated, I understood who was making the decision. And this decision point for me was whether or not I was going to be okay and stay on the sidelines or get in the fight and run for county commissioner. Now, When I was having that conversation, everybody said everything they could to deter me. You're too young. You need to stay in your place. Wait your turn. If you run, you're going to lose, and no one will ever hire you again. Now, my decision could have been to be afraid. My only hope and aspiration in life is being to hold a title. But no, I knew that the biggest thing that could have happened if I chose not to do it would be that my community would continue to get left behind. And so I decided to run for commissioner. Clearly we were successful, and it's been a whirlwind. We've done things like raise the minimum wage for county employees, bring paid parental leave for our county employees, because if we are a county about family, we have to reflect that in our policies. We've done things like, at this day and age, when they tell us they're trying to rewrite our history, to tell us who we are and how we got here, we decided to cement our history in stone and built the largest monument to African American history in this part of the country. We are doing some transformative things to improve the quality of life for people who live here, because that is the thing that needs to be done, so that Fort Bend County remains that light on the hill that changes the lives for those who call her home. But the reality is that if you pick up your newspaper or open up your news app or you watch TV, the stories that you are seeing are more stories of scandal than the stories of success of the hardworking people in Fort Bend County. What you hear us debating in Commissioner's Court is more about the issues of politicians than the issues of the hardworking people in this county. And I've had enough. I've had enough, my neighbors have had enough, and we've decided that we have to go in a different direction. And I am running for Fort Bend County Judge, which isn't a judge in the typical sense of wearing a black robe and adjudicating cases. I am running to be the next CEO of Fort Bend County, to make sure that we bring the focus back to where it always should have been, and that's in the fight for the people. I'm running for county judge to fight to make Fort Bend County a more affordable place to live. For those folks who are starting their careers and want to buy their first home here but can't do that today, and those seniors who are finding it too unaffordable to stay in theirs. I'm running to fight to bring high quality job and workforce development opportunities to our community, so that children like mine can decide to come right back home to raise their families, because we have created the community worthwhile for them. And most importantly, I'm running to fight to defend our democratic values, because we are seeing every day how those values are under attack. And if we're going to make sure that we are changing the trajectory of every person who wants to aspire to do great things in our community, that they have the ability to vote and make their voice heard. We fought the unprecedented mid-decade redistricting that Republicans brought to Fort Bend County. Well before they started the congressional redistricting process in Austin, we fought that process here. Now, we might not have been successful, as they carved up predominantly minority districts where for the first time people of color had the opportunity to elect people of their own choosing. While we might not have been successful in that fight, there were people who discovered their voices. There are people who started organizing for the first time. There are people who showed up to hold members of Commissioner's Court accountable and said, you're going to have to make these decisions by staring me right in my face. We are building a movement, and I'm asking you to join us in doing that. And so thank you for being here today as we are on the eve of early voting starting in this runoff election. Thank you for being a part of this movement we're trying to build, and I'm looking forward to joining hands with you as we walk boldly into the future that we will claim together. Thank y'all so much for your support. Thank you for being here.